Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a great weekend, and thank you very much, first and foremost, for taking a break from your Cyber Monday shopping to click on this video. I will have a second video dropping later on today, so be on the lookout for that. However, on this video, we are going to talk about something that we can prepare for. And don't let me forget that today is Silver Monday. So on this video, let me explain this really well, okay, so you all understand. In order to enter to win 4 ounces of silver for this video, all you have to do is just watch the video through, and I will give you instructions on how to enter. It's very simple. Some people email me with what they think is an entry and it's not. Some people have even emailed the sponsor of this video, Alpha Omega Gold, thinking that that's an entry. So just listen to the simple instructions. That way you can be entered to win 4 ounces of silver today on this video. And we are going to disclose the winner of last week's silver giveaway. Have you ever heard the term of a snake eating its own tail? Well, most Western nations, in my opinion, if not all Western nations, along with many other countries around the world, are in this predicament right now. At least here in the United States, we are in a downward spiral that only ends in one thing. And to me, the most important thing is that we prepare for what's coming, because we can prepare for this. Some people will survive and will do great. That's the 1%, because they always do. Or I would say probably the top 5 to 10%. They always do great when things like this happen throughout history. But the rest always have to suffer. Well, I'm telling you right now that we, part of the rest, we don't have to suffer. We can get prepared now for what's coming ahead. So today I have a couple of stories to go over with you. And the first one is about how we got ourselves into the doom loop that we are in right now. And unfortunately, throughout history, this doom loop always ends in something bad. The Federal Reserve is identified as the primary cause of inflation through its policy of currency debasement, which systematically destroys the value of Americans' savings and wages. And hopefully, those of you that have been following me for a while understand what inflation is and what the consequences of inflation are. For those of you that don't understand, really quickly, inflation is just adding money to the money supply. And I'll call it money because most people see the dollar bill as money, right? It's just adding more dollar bills to the economy, to the money supply, which does what? It debases the currency. It makes that currency more, therefore it's now valued less. A political inflation doom loop is described where the government prints money to fund spending, causing prices to rise. You see, the rising of prices is what happens when inflation has already happened. So they print money, they put it out into the economy, and that inflation of the monetary supply is what makes the price of things go up. And this is the important part about inflation and the public. It leads the public to demand more government relief, necessitating even more money printing. So it's a snake eating its own tail. And it's also the Cloward and Piven strategy playing out right in front of our faces. If you haven't seen the video that I put out about Cloward and Piven, you definitely need to see that video, ladies and gentlemen. I'll leave it on a card up here or up here, wherever it comes up. Not only watch that video, but share it with your children, because they're going to need to know this information in order to be able to get along in their lifetime. There is a deliberate and widespread misunderstanding of inflation's root cause, with the public blaming supply chains or corporate greed instead of monetary policy. You see, yes, inflation or the inflation in the price of things could be because of supply and demand. But if the money's not there in order to be able to purchase those items, then there wouldn't be that inflation in the price of things, ladies and gentlemen. Inflation is what allows the prices to go up because now you have more dollars chasing the same or lesser amount of goods. I have to agree with this next statement. The United States has crossed the Rubicon, with a political system now dependent on a majority that benefits from government spending, making it impossible to stop the inflationary cycle. So you see, it's not only people here in the United States that are dependent on government for entitlements and benefits as well, but it's also workers. Although the United States government, I think they hire maybe, let's say a couple million, 3 million people that they hire, right? Well, off of those jobs, there's another 20, 25 million jobs that are created because of those initial jobs that exist. So let's say the government hires, let's say 2 million full-time employees to work as GS or WG workers, etc. Well, they also hire contractors that's not really counted as an employee because they're contractors. So now you're looking at a country of 300 and let's say 30 million people, where about 100 million altogether depend on the government in one way or another. And not only that, what about the other 60 or so million that are on benefits like Social Security or Medicare, or that have retirements from a federal job that they retire from? Almost half of the country, if not at least half of the country, depend on government to spend in order for our economy to be stable enough to where it doesn't crash. But eventually, a fiat currency debases to the point where the people don't trust it, and that's what we have to prepare for. Because the US dollar, as it stands today, the definition of the US dollar today is what can it buy you today? Well, a year from now, the definition of that dollar is going to be different. It'll look the same, it'll be called the same thing, but it's going to be different because it's going to buy you less than what it does today, and that's all due to inflation. And because of inflation, the government is able to do all of these things that it does, which it otherwise would not be able to do, ladies and gentlemen. I believe this is one of the most important, if not the most important subject that we can learn and that we can teach our children. That way we don't find ourselves down this road in the next 1 or 2 or 3 generations. And that's what they say right here. The ultimate outcome is a continued and accelerating devaluation of the currency, and the only resource for individuals is to understand this trend and prepare for the consequences personally, because there's no stopping it anymore. We are not stopping this road that we're on. It doesn't matter what fork we take, to the right or the left, it's going to lead to that same wall. And when it hits that wall, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to come to an abrupt stop. And that's what we have to be prepared for. The U.S. is caught in a political inflation loop, they say, that is systematically destroying life savings and paving a direct path toward an entrenched, poverty-inducing socialism. And that's what happens when people depend on government to provide them a living, is that they end up saying, I'm entitled to this. You need to give me this. I've been getting this for the last 40 years. How can you not give it to me? Well, there's no money left. Well, then find the money. And what does the government do? Well, if I want their vote, I'm going to have to find that money. And in most cases, they just print it out of thin air, where the money has no value coming out of that printing press, but then gains its value by stealing little bits and pieces of the value of the money that you saved and worked for over the years. Imagine working a 9-to-5 for 50 years, only for the Federal Reserve to print 40% of the money supply and inflate away 20 years of your hard work. That's exactly what happens when they print money. Savers lose the value that they actually gave to earn that money over the years. You don't have to imagine. It actually happened during the COVID mass psychosis. And during the COVID era, let's call it, they printed in that time 40% of all the money that's ever existed in the United States of America from its founding. What do you think that's going to do to the price of things, ladies and gentlemen? We aren't producing any more goods than we were back then, which means that there's now more dollars in the system chasing the same amount of goods. The road to serfdom consists of working exponentially harder in order to earn currency growing exponentially weaker. So remember, for years I've been telling you this, especially when they were offering us those stimmy checks back in 2020, 2021, I think. I said, we are going to be paying for these stimmy checks for the rest of our lives. And it's going to be multiples and multiples of what we actually received. And that came to be true, heck, probably within a year or two after the stimmy checks were handed out. If you'll remember, the average American got roughly about $3,000, $3,200 worth of stimulus altogether, while the Federal Reserve and the banks printed trillions and trillions of dollars. And now, after everyone's already spent their $3,200 in stimulus checks, what happens? Now it costs the average American family about an extra $1,000, $1,100 a month. Well, if you multiply $1,000 by 12 months in a year, that's $12,000 a year that the average family has to spend now, more than they did back then. Have your wages or the wages of the average worker gone up $1,000 a month in the last 3 or 4 years? I would say not. As living standards decline, a suffering populace turns to the government for relief. That's the Hegelian dialectic. The government creates a crisis, then they wait to see how the public reacts, and then they offer a solution that benefits their agenda, not the people. Demanding stimulus checks, universal basic income, and higher minimum wage. And we all know that none of that stuff works, at least not for you, the common person. A Newsweek poll shows that 63% of Americans strongly support government stimulus checks to fight inflation, which is the exact same thing that makes inflation and makes the price of things to go up. In other words, let's combat the effects of currency debasement by engaging in even more currency debasement. It's a snake eating its own tail. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we can protect ourselves against this. What do? Stock up on food, water filtration, medicine. You should have your own little mercantile in your home. Have your own little Walmart in your home with everything that you know you're going to need in order to sustain the standard of living that you currently live for about a year, if not longer, if you can. And I've always recommended, well, I can't recommend this because I'm not a financial advisor, and I have to say that because I'm on the internet, ladies and gentlemen, but I've always advocated for people taking their excess wealth. And let me explain to you what I mean by excess wealth. Once you have your preps, once you have all the things that you know you're going to need for a certain number of months, whatever you're comfortable with, and you have an emergency account, an emergency savings account, so you can at least pay your rent for 2 or 3 months or pay your mortgage for 2 or 3 months in case something happens, etc., then what's left over is what I call excess wealth. So if you have a little bit of extra money at the end of the month, or if you have savings that you put away in cash, instead of doing so, go ahead and put it into something that's tangible, that will not lose its purchasing power. And I'm going to prove to you here in a minute that it does work. You just have to be patient and not too emotional. Now, this leads me to thanking the sponsor of this video, Alpha Omega Gold, who is, by the way, the ones that gave me the silver to give away to you all. Ladies and gentlemen, you all know that I've spent years helping people prepare for uncertain times through practical action coupled with real-world solutions, and most importantly, faith. One of the smartest steps I've taken over the years is moving part of my savings into physical gold and silver. And that's why I've decided to partner with Alpha Omega Gold. They help people like you and me protect what we've earned over the years instead of letting it burn in the inferno of inflation. Alpha Omega Gold helps you protect your wealth by safely holding it outside the system through direct physical delivery of your precious metals in your hands or with a gold and silver IRA. So why did I decide to partner with Alpha Omega Gold? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I talked to the owner at hand. I did my research and found out that they have a great Better Business Bureau rating, and they are very charitable and a faith-based organization. They help guide you with patience and understanding with your personal circumstances, so it's tailored to you. They truly represent honesty and integrity built on biblical values, trust, and personal preparedness. If you're concerned about inflation, central bank control, or the weakening dollar, give Alpha Omega Gold a call at 855-426-4653, or simply click on the link that I'm going to leave on a pinned comment and or the description of this video. This is the chart of gold, and I've got it labeled all the way back to January of 2020. And as you can see, the price back then was roughly $1,300. Now, 2020 January is right before all of the COVID stuff started and they started printing money like crazy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, would you agree that had you put your excess wealth in gold, and wait till we see the silver chart, ladies and gentlemen, I'm actually going to do a little bit of a prediction on the silver chart and show you where we're at. Well, if you would have taken $1,300 5 years ago or 5.5 years ago and bought an ounce of gold, today an ounce of gold is worth what? $4,200. Let's say that once you go to a pawn shop or to a coin shop, etc., and you trade that in for cash, you sell it to them for cash. Let's say they give you a couple $100 less, or let's say $300 less, right? You have $3,900. That means that what you paid for that gold, $1,300, is now worth 3 times more the original price, which means that you gained in nominal terms 200% above the original price. Do you think that 200% between then and now would have covered the inflation that you're seeing in the price of things? I would say so. This is just a tool. Listen, gold is money, and money is just a tool in order for you to use that gives you more options. You would have a lot more options today with an ounce of gold that you paid $1,300 for 5 years ago than if you would have saved that $1,300 and put it under your mattress. Because today that $1,300 would probably buy you $500 worth of stuff, where today that ounce of gold will buy you at least what you could buy back then with what you spent on it, if not more. And I would say that it would buy you more. So that's what I mean about preserving your purchasing power, preserving your wealth, instead of letting inflation eat away at it. Now, this is just for a little bit of fun, but have you seen the price of silver lately? Oh my goodness, we are headed to the moon. Just kidding. But I wanted to show you this. I did the same thing in January of 2020 as I did with gold, and silver at that time was $17 per ounce. And today it's sitting at just shy of $58 per ounce. So silver in nominal terms since 2020 has gone more than 200% above the price that it was valued at back then. And the same thing with silver, ladies and gentlemen. It's protected your purchasing power. It's gone up in nominal value a little more than 2 times its original price. Same as gold, it would buy you today what it bought you back then, if not more. And if you want to take a quick look at what I think silver is going to do in the short term and then in the middle to long term, this is what I came up with. I think in the short term, within the next month or two, silver is going to be sitting at about $63, $64 an ounce. And that's just doing a tiny bit of technical analysis. I'm not going to go through how I did it. I've done it in other videos, but that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at about $63, maybe $64 an ounce in the next, let's say, quarter. And, you know, I'm actually thinking it's going to hit that before the end of this year, but I'll be conservative and say in the next quarter. Well, what about in the next 6 months to a year? Well, in the next 6 months to a year, I've got silver hitting just shy of $100. But I think that if we get up to $95, where I have it pegged at, I think that the psychology in people will push it over 100 with no problem. That's where I see it going. I'm just an amateur at this. But hey, ladies and gentlemen, I've been screaming at you all for the last 5, 6, 7 years, right? Ever since silver was even lower than $17 an ounce, that we needed to put our excess wealth in this metal. And look at how it's done. I'm glad that I put some of my excess wealth in silver and a little bit of gold as well, because at least it lets me know that, A, the man didn't get me. He didn't get me this time. I was able to put away some of my little bit of extra savings in a platform or in a vehicle that they were not allowed to steal from. And Americans are hurting right now, ladies and gentlemen, but those that put away a little bit of gold and silver in the past, they're doing a little bit better than others. As money gets tighter, more people are selling gold and silver. And guess who's buying that gold and silver? The wholesalers buy it from the pawn shops or the coin shops. And who are they selling it to? I believe they're selling that to banks, because banks have been hoarding gold and silver now for several years at record paces. For years, Jacob stacked silver coins and bullion, building his treasure and waiting for the perfect moment to let it go, if that moment ever came. I've always said that if you're a silver stacker, that you will know when you need to spend it. You will know when you need to spend it. You don't have to ask anyone, hey, should I sell now? Should I sell? No, you will know when you need to spend it. Because for me, putting away precious metals as a savings is something that I'm doing for the long term and something that I'm hoping I never have to use. I could just leave it to my kids. With prices in late 2025 rapidly rising, money running low, and the holidays approaching, he decided to sell them on November 18th at the spot market price of $50.13 per ounce. He should have waited another 2 weeks. He would have gotten an extra $7 or $6 an ounce per coin. For many, the need for cash is immediate, with essentials like groceries and electricity bills taking priority over holding onto their investment. And that's exactly what silver and gold are for. It's a form of savings that, most importantly, does not allow the government to eat away at the value with inflation, but that you can get to quickly and liquidate quickly in order to help to support your life. So right now we are going to pick last week's winner of the 4 ounces of silver that we're giving away. And ladies and gentlemen, in order to enter for this giveaway, for this silver giveaway, for this video, we're also giving away 4 ounces. Okay? For this video, all you have to do is in a comment, ladies and gentlemen, under this video that you're watching right now, leave a comment with the word silver in it. SILVER. You don't need to email me with the word silver. You don't need to email or contact Alpha Omega Gold with the word silver in order to enter to win, unless you want to do business with them. I'm obviously going to leave their link and their phone number on a pinned comment. So if you want to enter to win, and I know I'm being repetitive, I'm being verbose. One time someone left me a comment and he says, "You're verbose." And I'm like, what in the world is verbose? I had to look it up. So I'm being verbose. And if you don't know what that means, go look it up. It's really funny. So make sure that you leave a comment under this video that you're watching right now with the word silver in it. And you'll be entered to win 4 ounces of silver, which I will be announcing the winner of on next Silver Monday. And as you can see, we have our video URL right here for the entry video. And I do believe that the word was theory. You are supposed to use the code word theory in a comment. So we're going to go ahead and fetch the comments right now. And let's see, includes replies. No, it doesn't include replies. It just includes original comments. And now it's going to go ahead and fetch all of the comments from that video that it's going to choose from. And look at that. We've got 1,386 original comments. Hey, all we have to do now is pick a winner. Boom. And the winner is Kelly Dufour, 3463. Kelly, congratulations. You just won yourself 4 ounces of silver. I hope that's right, that it's 4 ounces of silver. But even if it's not, I'm sending you 4 ounces of silver. So all you have to do is send me an email to this email address right here. Send me your name, send me your shipping address, wherever you want me to ship it to, and I will send it to you by next Monday. Hopefully it'll get there for you before Christmas. So congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, I love doing this. I want to thank Alpha Omega Gold for allowing me to do this, because if not for them, I wouldn't be able to afford to give away all this silver. So God bless every single one of you. Thank you very much for joining in. Go back to your Cyber Monday shopping. I love you all. God bless America. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.